This session is an initiative by MMA AMP community, MarTech and Data, in partnership with RTB HOUSE. The Modern Marketer's Guide to Leveraging Data and MarTech is an insight-packed, action-oriented playbook. This second edition focuses on why data and MarTech need to be looked at from the same lens to ensure that together they create great business impact. And to discuss the same, we would now like to invite our panelists. First, we have Mr. Prashant Singh, Country Manager, India, RTB HOUSE. Mr. Kunal Aman, Head of Marketing and Communications, Indian Subcontinent, SAS India and Japan. Ms. Monica Khurana, Country Head and Board Member, India, MMA Global India. And our moderator for the panel discussion, Mr. Neeraj Pratap Sanghani, CEO, Hansa Equity.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Modern Marketer's Guide to Leveraging Data and MarTech Playbook. It's a session where we will discuss how data and MarTech are intertwined in today's world to really deliver a great connected customer experience. An organization's ability to deal with uncertainty will shape their future. Data and MarTech projects are interdisciplinary and collaborative in nature, but very few organizations and senior leaders today understand or rather act on it with any urgency. Today, everyone talks about delivering a great connected customer experience, but a customer experience is not only about MarTech and automation. It is equally about the data availability, quality, the data architecture, and much, much more. Both data and MarTech need to work in unison to deliver a superlative customer experience. I keep saying this and I can't say it enough. It takes a lot of hard work to make your customer's life easy. And trust me when I say it, because I go through it on a daily basis. The Modern Marketer's Guide to Leveraging Data and MarTech was unveiled yesterday at the 11th edition of the MMA Impact India. It is an insight-packed, action-oriented playbook. The second edition focuses on why data and MarTech need to be looked at from a different lens, and actually from the same lens, to ensure that a great business impact is created by uniting both data and marketing technology. The guide also takes into account the current state of data and MarTech maturity in India through an extensive survey conducted in the months of March and April 2022. It touches upon various subjects which include IoT, RPA, bots, and all kinds of new technology and new platforms, including CDPs, CXPs, and their evolution at this point of time, which is really going to change actually how marketers conduct their campaigns and build their brands in today's world. This edition is a representation of how the MarTech maturity space is evolving as brands and organizations have access to more and more data. This guide extensively covers a roadmap for marketing technology and maturity, focusing on the fast evolving customer expectations about CX, future trends, the data conundrum that we will discuss today, including privacy and data governance issues, new tools and platforms. So without further ado, actually, let me go forward and introduce today's panelist for this discussion. Good afternoon, everybody. We have a distinguished panel to discuss this today. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Prashant Singh, Country Manager, RTB HOUSE, deep experience in the space and performance marketing, and has been a veteran in this industry for more than 15 years. Kunal Aman, welcome, Prashant.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here to share my perspective and learn more from the panelists.
Great to have you. And Kunal Aman, Head of Marketing and Communications at SAS for the Indian subcontinent. Welcome, Kunal. Great to have you on the panel discussion today.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thanks for the opportunity.
And of course, Monica Khurana, Country Head, MMA India. Monica, great to have this discussion with you. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. So looking forward to it.
So I'll just get to the point straight away. Everybody's talking about a great connected customer experience. But Prashant, if I may ask you to start with, what defines a great customer experience? What is the role of data actually in providing a great customer experience?
Thank you, Neeraj, for the question. I think a great customer experience, in my opinion, would be how I would like to receive the experience with the brand that I engage. I think it has to be extremely personalized. It has to be very timely, and it has to drive the context in the way a brand wants to engage with the consumer. or let's say if they are already their customers, how they continuously want to grow their relationship. And a great customer experience, I feel, can only be delivered if we connect different pillars around it. Some of them, like I said, it has to be personalized in a way it feels personalized to a consumer or a customer in case of a business customer. It is driven by signals or information that consumers or customers share. So how you connect those signals, how do you connect those contexts and use that data to make it personalized. We are all living in the age of technology. We all use technology in our lives. We all use technologies at our workplaces. How do we make best use of that technology? Whether it is technologies as advanced as machine learning or deep learning, or simple technologies like how we communicate on apps or even emails. All technologies play a very important role in different aspects of that omni-channel communication that we want to do. And the most important thing that I feel is the human touch, which is the intent. So I think unless the organization have that intent, the great experience that we want to deliver to our consumers is very limited. So I think consumers today engaging with so many brands, good brands, large brands, small brands, they already understand what kind of experience they expect. And if brands are able to go much deeper in understanding that information and being very authentic, very close, not overdo it or not underdo it, just create that right balance in terms of where to reach and when to reach. I think consumers are on that journey of experiencing that brand. So these are some of the things that I think what a great customer experience should look like in today's environment.
Sure. Thanks. Kunal, your perspective?
Sure. I think Prashant covered a number of good points there. Purely from my perspective, customer experience has become such an overused word over the years, right? And now it's really trending since the past 4 or 5 years. But it's happening so because the center of gravity in business in general has shifted from the inside of the organization out to the customer, right? And essentially, there are two motions that are responsible here. First is that obviously the customers have rapidly evolved and they have tapped into a world of information and they're spoiled for choices. Right? And the second thing is that there is a growing legion of digital businesses that has increasingly focused on removing the friction points in the journey. Right? So these sort of businesses have truly shown what customer experience can look like, right? So, and that's become the benchmark many a times for customers across the board. So whether you're an online passenger, an online retail consumer, most of our expectations today as consumers are being dictated by rules that are possibly existing in another industry. Right? So that's the high level of satisfaction and experience that people have come to expect. Coming to the second point, I think, which is around what does that experience look like today, right? So we're talking about a customer experience being connected, being personalized, as Prashant said, and finally, most importantly, seamless across channels. And there shouldn't be any friction points, and that's what an ideal and a simple customer experience would look like. Now, coming to the second point, which is the second part of the question, which is around what is the role of data today? I think, right? I think organizations have truly realized that data is now a business critical asset. Right? It's transforming how and what people purchase. It's transforming how they're communicating with them, and it's also all about collaboration, right? So there are a few ways that I think some of the top-notch brands are using customer data, and I think it's important to highlight those. So I would say that at the highest level, right, just gaining a 360-degree view of the customer is one of those areas. Right? How can we unify data across what is coming inside the organization from the marketing channels, what is getting generated within the organization, and what's possibly something that's coming through the voice of the customer, right? Whether it's online or offline. Connecting all of that, unifying that is one such area where data can be really, really well used. So you can get very, very valuable insights about your customers' needs when you successfully manage to gain that view. And personally at SAS, we've been helping a few customers across in the insurance space more recently to achieve that as insurance as an industry goes digital, right? Similarly, I think best-in-class companies also are looking to optimize customer journeys, not just touch points, but the entire journey, right? And that's where data and analytics specifically has a very critical role to play, right? Because only through the use of data and analytics can organizations truly determine which are the factors which are most critical, most important to the customer segments that they're serving, right? And what are those journeys that their customers might be undertaking, which is really creating that economic value? And what are those friction points in that customer journey that needs to be resolved? So all of that, I think, can be truly achieved by the right use of data and application of analytics. And the last point, I think, is personalization, which Prashant obviously talked about. But now I think the idea is in the industry is that how do we achieve personalization at scale, right? I think there are some leaders who have already achieved a certain amount of personalization, but I think the next level is really in terms of maturing to a level where we are looking at personalization, but at scale. So I think, really that's the next level of maturity that the industry is really looking at.
Perfect. I'll come back to you on the last point that you make with a question on it later. But Monica, actually what Prashant and Kunal are saying, it's resonating a bit differently in our survey at this point of time, right?
Right.
We spoke to very senior people, CXOs, marketing heads, business heads, and our surveys kind of suggest that only 3% of the organizations have been able to optimize themselves with regards to their data maturity. So what do you think others are missing out on at this point of time? Can you throw some light on this, Monica?
Sure, absolutely. So like you rightly said, only 3% have really managed to build a unified approach through which they get an omni-channel view of their customers, and which in turn really builds a lot of intelligence for them to deliver a seamless experience, to drive business growth, etc. But the other, so like you said, our survey said 3% is who's actually doing it. So therefore, how do the others look in that bucket? So when we divided this into different levels, we segregated them from unaware to the most mature, right? So the unaware was like 13%. The reactive ones who were reacting to this trend were about 27%. And then there was a proactive stroke managed category, which was the rest, and 3% was the optimized category. So what are they essentially missing is the ability to be able to build the right kind of intelligence systems, the right architecture to be able to leverage data effectively. So for example, in the survey, if we're saying 27% is reacting, which means they already have that rich data sitting with them, but maybe they are not doing the right they're not taking the right measures to enhance and enrich that data to make it unified, to be able to put it to a good business use case, right? So that is the reason why probably they're missing the opportunity and the benefit data as fuel offers. So I think that's one piece. But having said that, if these organizations have to learn from the more mature ones, then verticals like finance and e-commerce seem to be the right ones to sort of draw some learnings from, to get insights from, because they're the ones who seem to have definitely traveled a fair bit and are more mature in the life stage of data, and have put infrastructure in place which is proven a lot of efficacy, a lot of outcomes for their businesses. And they've also managed to solve for something which we call data governance, which all of us understand as experts, which is also very important, because today you cannot, you have to use data responsibly, and you have to use it, as per the right policies, etc. And for which to have robust governance is very important in the organization. Else you could really sort of, travel the other way, and which is exactly not what you should do. Therefore, even at MMA, we are consciously trying to educate the members and the larger community on using data responsibly, and yet being able to leverage the benefit of personalization.
Thank you, Monica, for your insights. Another survey factor, and I'll probably pick this conversation up with Prashant now. Now, the another important facet is that more than 45 to around 60% actually marketers confess that most of their campaigns today are still standalone campaigns. Some of them claim that yes, they are somewhat aligned across mediums, across digital, offline, online, and all of that. But today, customer journeys have become non-linear, right? Customer can touch you anywhere. He can touch you digitally, he can touch you in a dealership, he can touch you on a mobile phone. So how are brands going to manage this or leverage these micro moments during this journey? And you spoke about hyper-personalization at scale to start with. So how is it going to unfold in the marketplace according to you?
Very true, Neeraj. I think this is one of the points we were discussing as well. I think the percentage could in actual look higher as well. More than 45% might agree that some sort of their omni-channel brand communication is disconnected. And I think both brands and, let's say, the products they've been working with, they both have been at it for some years. And both have been trying to get better. I think I'll share an experience from, when we talk to a lot of customers. The first thing which is happening in this space is brands are acknowledging that this is happening, and hence the reason that they've shared this in survey. So they know, like what's happening in advertising is when we talk to our customers, they obviously have questions around, are we overdoing our communication or are we underdoing our communications? Yeah. We work with several partners. How do we connect the frequency of our communication, right? How do we build, even if these are different products like Google, Facebook, Twitter, several OTTs, how do we connect, let's say, statistical models to try and arrive how many times we are engaging with them? And it's not just digital first brands, it's even brands in FMCG, right? It's very known that brands like PepsiCo have focused on almost hundreds of millions of first party data, right? And they just don't do brand communication for a product or or in a region. They also want to engage and learn from their consumers, do surveys, and they collect a lot of that information to try and understand, what's really the experience, or what's really the communication that they're doing. So I think the most important thing which is happening right now is brands have acknowledged it, that they are not there, and this needs work to be done. Now, why does it happen? Let's take an example of India. Almost, if we say 1.3 billion, I think it'll be more, 1.3 billion people. If we look at the access to smartphones, almost 800, 900 million consumers. If we just look at digital as an engagement medium, these consumers produce almost billions of interactions. Now, this generates massive amount of data. Even if we look at a brand who's best in omni-channel journey, and the product who's able to deliver it for that brand, you wouldn't say that it's 100% done. Why? Because there is massive amount of data. So what really is the next step that most of the brands are now taking is trying to evaluate or trying to go deeper on technology, which can really make use of this massive amount of data. And that's what most marketers are today investing. That's also is where regulatory bodies are going. If you look at it, regulatory bodies like GDPR or even councils in Europe who've been in conversation with Google, there is already a data law around privacy which is being discussed in Parliament, right? So privacy will also become more and more important, and hence technology will play one of the most important role in evolution of how today's survey at 45% can probably reach to 75% in next few years to come. So I think these are few factors which is what will shape up making the omni-channel communication, making the customer feel that the brands that they engage with understand when they want to be reached, what do they really want to hear, and how they can really share the feedback.
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, Prashant, you hit the nail on the head, because the Modern Marketer's Guide to Leveraging Data and MarTech this year is a completely different version from what we did last year. And that's the evolution which the market is undergoing right now. Because at one point of time, marketing technology was bought because of automation and stuff like that, without really taking cognizance of what is the data flow like, what is the volume of data coming in, is the data in the right quality, is it architected correctly? So all of these things, and I think Kunal, you can weigh in on this for me. The guide does provide guidance for selecting the right marketing technology stacks. But in your opinion, how should brands select the right stack in today's connected experience, surfeit of data? I mean, you are like drowning in data at this point of time. Are there any specific do's and don'ts while selecting the right stacks?
Yeah, that's a very good. It's a conundrum to solve, if you ask me, Neeraj, because not only are brands drowning in data, but they're also struggling to keep pace with the growth that we are seeing in the MarTech landscape, right? Yeah. Because that's become extremely complex. And if you look at it right from a brand's perspective, it's almost never a fresh start, right? Organizations have often invested in different stacks at various points in time, right? And unfortunately, those stacks solved some point problem at that particular point in time, but then it remained as that that one tool which is used for solving one issue. And then when the maturity finally gets into the system, we realize that things have started falling through the cracks, because one MarTech stack doesn't talk to another, or they're having different sources of truths, so to speak. So those are some of the challenges that I think MarTech stacks typically present to brands. But all in all, I think an ideal MarTech stack, if there is one, then that should appropriately stitch technologies and help the brand understand what's happening through the entire customer life cycle, right? So it's talking right from attracting the right customers, segmenting them, engaging with them, and finally also retaining them in an efficient and a profitable manner, right? So that's what an ideal MarTech stack should enable marketers to do. There are a few do's and don'ts in my book when it comes to when we are really looking at evaluating MarTech stacks, and that's what it happens to be true here at SAS as well. That's something. These are some of those journeys and some of those learnings that I have taken away from evaluating the MarTech chat stacks as well. One is the key important starting point for us has always been having a very clear strategy, right? And I'm not talking about a MarTech strategy. I'm talking about a marketing strategy, and really understanding how that marketing strategy fits into that overall business strategy, right? Because there are two things that we need to achieve there, right? Why are we really conducting this whole exercise of investment into a MarTech stack? What problems are we trying to solve? What are the friction points that need to go away once it's implemented, right? And where will our MarTech maturity be after that? So these are some of those basic questions that I think require a lot of deliberation right at the very start. And at the same time, the piece which I talked about, which is how does this fit into the overall marketing strategy and then on to the business strategy, is where I think even executive buy-in comes into picture, right? Because we need that executive buying and leadership buy-in to ensure that the budgets are allocated. There is also the point of ensuring that success at the end of the day ties back to the business strategy. So I think those two are, in my opinion, very, very important areas that marketing teams need to really spend time on when it comes to MarTech investments. The second part would be, I think, really assessing where is the particular organization in its MarTech maturity. And this is a place that we need to be really candid, right? That we need to understand what is preventing us from creating that ideal customer journey or creating that ideal customer experience, and where is the MarTech stack failing us at this point in time, right? So it's kind of looking at where we are, and I'm sure and we in MMA have a bunch of material and reports to really help people assess the MarTech maturity as well. And finally, also really looking at what we have at this point in time, from a MarTech standpoint. And does it really require us to overhaul things? Is it beyond for us to kind of really look at gaps and filling those? So I think those are some of the other questions that we need to answer. What are some of those gaps? And does our budgetary spend allow for filling those gaps? So those are some of those important do's, if I may, when we are looking at evaluating MarTech stacks. And beyond just, of course, the capability of the technology provider, how does it fit? What does the vision look like? And all of that, right? I think those are areas that marketing team often spend a lot of time on. But the three pieces that I mentioned about the strategy, assessment, and understanding what are the gaps that we need to fill are also super important in my opinion. Purely from a don't standpoint, I think it's becoming increasingly clear to brands that I think there's no one size fits all sort of an approach, right? What is right from a scalability standpoint or from a technology standpoint may not be necessarily what is right for you in your organizational as well as your marketing maturity, right? Where are you in that journey? So I think there is no one size fits all sort of an approach that one can take here. That's super important to realize. So whatever stitching that needs to happen to solve the overall business problem that we have is what is possibly right. And obviously we are looking at shelf life here, right? We're looking into the future, looking into the vision of the products that are possibly getting stitched together in order to give that seamless experience to our customers. So that's a clear thing to keep in mind. And finally, also in my opinion, it's important to investigate integration points, right? Because not all stacks play very well with each other. They might do certain things very, very well, but if it's not talking to each other, and we have a problem, because the bridges are not connected, and things will again start to fall through as we go along. So those are a couple of things that coming from my own personal experience, I could share with our audience here.
Great. Thank you, Kunal. I think you touched upon all the relevant points, and all of these are covered in great depth in the Data and MarTech report. So I would request people to have a look at it. Very, very important issues which Kunal brought up now, extensively covered in it. And the next point, and Kunal kind of touched upon it, is collaboration and leadership, ownership and stewardship of these projects. Monica, at MMA, you interact with CXOs and you have set up the MMA MarTech Council, which is like really there to help brands and organizations navigate their way in this world of data and MarTech. What in your experience or opinion is the role of leadership, and how worried are they? And in your conversations, what is your experience of them really taking on this very seriously, dealing with employees, upskilling them, and managing this digital transformation?
Wow, that's multiple questions rolled into one. I'm going to try and break it into parts and see how richly I can sort of, address all of that, because that's valuable and it's important for us to share, with the industry on how we're really trying to enable and empower the leaders in this very, very important category, which just to bring it alive for perspective, the recent Gartner survey has said that there are close to 26% of marketing budgets which are being allocated to MarTech, which is massive and huge. So there's no ways a leader or leadership cannot take note of that. The very fact that there's such a large investment behind it. So definitely there is leadership involvement needed. There is leadership alignment needed. So clearly they do want to do as much as they can. However, there is definitely there is a huge challenge they're facing. I mean, we've had members, CMO who are CMOs, who are who are CEOs, come and tell us about how they really want to understand the space better, how they want to be able to feel more empowered to take the right decisions and to be able to leverage this very valuable resource, which now is like a must have, right? Because like at one point in time we used to say there cannot be marketing without technology. We've reached a phase where we say that there cannot be there cannot be marketing without data and technology, right? It's moved on, right? We know that there has to be data and it has to be robust, and the data has to be managed sort of leveraged effectively at the back of technology. So they become very important aspects of every business. So coming back to the point, leaders definitely are very hungry to understand, to learn. In fact, we've gone and set up sessions for a lot of our members with experts like, say, Kunal or Prashant. And, we've really got them involved to be able to evangelize this space a lot more than before. There's a lot more time invested. As far as our council goes, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to ensure, we encourage leaders to invest time into being a part of it, because it's a great learning place and a learning forum where what we're trying to do is we've got the ecosystem together, because these are areas where the ecosystem needs to be engaged. So on one hand, we may say unified data management, but that unified data management can only happen at the back of all stakeholders being unified and having the common understanding and knowledge needed for it, right? Like the agency needs to speak the same language as the brand, and the tech enabler needs to be able to make sure that the brand and agency both are as educated as they should be to do justice. Because again, from the Gartner survey, I want to quote that there are investments which exist. However, with the investments there, in terms of utility, which is another area we've been trying to tackle, there's only 58% of those investments or in technology which are actually being utilized. So it's not just about our people investing, it's about people are investing, but yet haven't utilized it much and as effectively as they should, right? So that's another area where we're really trying to work closely to make sure that organizations utilize those platforms, those tools, which can give them the bang for their buck and which can give them the growth that they're looking at achieving. So that's the other area. And now to sum up, from as a council, how we're trying to work with leadership in various organizations, we're trying to set up roadshows, which could be standalone or cross-organization. We're building a lot of white papers and reports. The one we've launched yesterday being one such use case in terms of being able to educate with the help of the ecosystem and bring together like a one view of kind of getting a richer understanding. And on the other side, we're trying to build a lot of skilling partnerships for our members and for our partners, because skilling is one big area which even the survey calls out is hugely lacking, where maybe one of the reasons why technology is underutilized is because there isn't enough skilling which has happened to be able to use it effectively. So that's again an area where we're really trying to invest a lot of time and effort to make sure that there are better programs being offered, and there are there is more skilling KPI actually built into being able to adopt data and tech. So those are some of the things which we're trying to help leadership with, at the back of the fact that like on a lighter note, we keep saying that we are constantly trying to help the marketer save his job. So we're doing everything we can to make sure they retain their jobs.
Thank you for that. And again, on a lighter note, all recent surveys tell us not more than 25% of CMOs stay in the job for more than 18 months. So yeah, it's a stressful world out there. Marketing is at the center stage. They are in the boardroom. They are calling the shots in a lot of places. Customer experience is driving brand performance, business performance. And that, yes, brings me to the most critical question of the day, actually. How do you measure ROI, and how do you measure MarTech investments? It's an elephant in the room. Most people are really struggling to answer this question eruditely. Kunal, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's definitely the elephant in the room, right? Because again, when it comes to ROI, it's such a tricky thing, right? When it comes to, but I think the way MarTech ROI needs to be seen is that just talking back to my earlier point of just looking at it from a business perspective, right? The very first step is what business problem is this going to solve, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, does that investment that we have made solve that issue, right? And to what extent have we exceeded expectations and all that? So I think those sort of conversations are best had even before we start investing, right? So I think that's the first step, right? To measure success, we need to understand what success looks like in the very first place. I think those sort of conversations are critically in terms of really driving. And of course, that this means that there needs to be enough investment in measuring the milestones, measuring the KPIs across the business when it comes to really looking at the impact of the MarTech stack, right? So, for example, in our own experience, when we worked with one of the largest telecom providers, at that point in time, they did not. The problem that they were really trying to solve for was creating. They were not able to segment their customers, right? And that's the area. And even further beyond segmentation, they also wanted to really hyper personalize that. When you're looking at a subscriber base of, let's say, 250 million subscribers, segmenting them into 10 or 15 segments just doesn't suffice, right? So that's where we kind of really wanted a MarTech stack to do that for them. And at that point in time, they were like witnessing 1 billion transactions every day, generating around 65 terabytes of data daily. So it was really humongous, right? And the MarTech stack that we deployed there identified around 1,400 variables in the very first go about what is really impacting the customer journey, right? And then really creating these small micro segments of look-alike customers, right? Bringing it down to 50,000, 100,000 in terms of the bucket of a particular customer segment. And then really the next step was to really do the personalization at the particular scale, which allows for sending them a tailorized or a personalized message for, let's say, upskilling or really upselling or cross-selling a particular price plan, for example, right? So I think as an example, this was a classic one where we could look at what is the business problem that we are trying to solve. Did the marketing stack, the campaign management stack really solve that particular problem, right? And I think at the end of the day, when the telecom provider saw $100 million in terms of uptick revenue, right, coming in from these sort of campaigns, they realized that this was a great investment. And the point being that Earlier, they were doing a blanket approach, sending out offers which were not necessarily customized at all to a particular customer's needs. So I think just coming back to the point, I think, what are the sort of issues that it's trying to solve? Have we invested in analytics that allow us to measure success? Those become important. What Monica also talked about, which is utilization, becomes very important, right? Because that's another issue that we have often seen in the customers that we work with. There are MarTech stacks that they have invested in, but are not getting used. Right? I remember reading a Gartner article, which further said that beyond certain MarTech stacks not getting used, even the ones that are getting used are being possibly explored only to 58% of their overall capability, right? So really looking at skilling, which is an important point that Monica brought about, right? But I think how do we get the right people skilled so that they can utilize more of the features that have come through the investment that we have made? I think those are some of those areas that I think will really improve the sort of ROI that anyone would see in their. So those are some of those things, I think. And again, all of these need to be talking back to the overall leadership council that you might have set up at the very start. So I think that's another area that I think organizations can do well in really establishing at the very first go. So those are some of my learnings firsthand, Neeraj.
I'm just going to introduce one quick jargon here. Because this question that you've asked, I think it's very relevant for me to say that, at MMA, we've been sort of popularizing this acronym, which is ROCE, which is Return on Customer Experience. And we truly believe that if there is one way to measure how successfully deployed your stacks are, the way to do it is measuring ROCE, right? So if you get a good NPS out of your ROCE, right, then you're doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for a very insightful discussion today. Basically, the job just got tougher, right? Marketers are supposed to understand neuroscience to start with, how the customer's mind works. Then they're supposed to understand behavioral science, how the customer actually behaves. And now you expect them to understand data science. And then, of course, technology too. So yes, I think marketers, you'll have to go to a different institute now to come out well equipped to fight this battle of the future for the mind share and the wallet share of the customer. But just to thank you all for a great discussion today. I also wanted to share that the Modern Marketer's Guide to Leveraging Data and MarTech not only highlights the challenges thrown up by the explosion of data, but also provides a well thought through framework that is required to evaluate the role of different tools and different people at different stages of the brand's and the organization's evolution. Some of the best minds at Hansas Equity and MMA MarTech Council have actively contributed to put the second edition of the Playbook out. This report can be downloaded from the MMA resources section. I'm sure you will find a lot of answers and practical solutions for what you're looking for. Do download this guide. Thank you very much. Great conversation with you, Prashant, Kunal, Monica. See you on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.
Prashant.
Lovely chatting.
Thank you, Kunal. Yeah.